Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love these watches, everything you see here is in stock and ready to sell. Reach out to Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase, pricing, and availability questions regarding these watches. When was the last time you saw this? All three silver Snoopies in one place. So with all due respect to the iconic 2015 model, let's go back to the beginning. This is the 2003 Omega Speedmaster Professional Moonwatch Silver Snoopy. So very little changed initially. This model is the most like a Moonwatch. It has a Hesalite crystal, it has the full bracelet, it has a dial that, Snoopy notwithstanding, is otherwise conventional. The tachometer too. Mechanically, it's a Moonwatch, caliber 1861 La Manna based. Now on the back you have the image of Snoopy that was drawn by Peanuts comics creator Charles Schulz specifically for NASA, and the Silver Snoopy Award was awarded by the astronauts to distinguished suppliers and employees of NASA. So this was something the astronauts gave out, and as a result it is very special. This was a limited edition from the beginning, but you can see that the edition number is fairly large. This is considered to be a watch that you need to complete the Snoopy set, and a surprising number of people own the 15 and the 2020 model, but not this one. This can often be the hardest of the three to actually track down. Still 42 millimeters in diameter in steel. It's got the 48-hour manual wind power reserve, a cam lateral clutch chrono, of course flown many times with NASA. This is a famous watch because it represents something actually used by astronauts in the modern era, not just historically. And again, this model, specifically the 2003, is the one that is closest to the watch recently flown with NASA. So an easy watch to wear on a 16 centimeter circumference wrist. It wears a little bit different than the others because of the bracelet, which gives it more substance. You can also see it's a solid end link bracelet, though back when these were made, Omega was still using pins and sleeves on removable links. 2015 brought a watch that, at least initially, was very fairly priced, around $7,500. I think a lot of us took this watch for granted as just another Speedmaster limited edition, but boy, were we wrong. This timepiece almost transcends the occasion of its issuing, which was the 45th anniversary of Apollo 13. Of course, Apollo 13 recovered despite catastrophic malfunctions, partly due to the use of an Omega Speedmaster for timing engine firings to change trajectory and return the crippled command module to Earth. So, paying tribute to the Silver Snoopy, earned by Omega from the astronauts as a result of Omega's involvement in saving the three-man crew of Apollo 13. So this watch is very different from the other moon watches. Although it's still a steel 42 millimeter case, the first thing you'll notice is that this is a sapphire crystal, whereas the original is a thermoplastic. You can also see that we've got a ceramic tachometer insert, and when we turn out the light, there's actually quite a bit to see when we turn out the light. First thing you could see is that the whole tach is loomed. The second thing you could see is that Snoopy is loomed. And then the third thing you'll notice is that all of the indices are applied blocks of solid luminescent material, and there's a negative achieved by putting a non-luminescent black strip of lacquer on top of each one. So a very, very special watch, day or night. Jumping back, you can see it's black and white like a comic strip in a newspaper. That's the idea right here. And they take it a little bit further, as we have 14 individual comic cells representing 14 seconds that the engines of Apollo 13 were fired as part of the approach to Earth and the correction of its course so that it could land safely. You can also see that we have that failure is not an option bubble. Snoopy's thinking that. That's not actually from the original episode. That is from the movie. I think Ed Harris said that. When you flip it over, you could see that Omega took this to the next level. First of all, a smaller edition number for the limited series, but then we have this lovely enamel, and this is fired enamel, and then on top of that, a hand-engraved sterling silver Snoopy. Again, it's the Charles Schulz drawing, but now it's been realized by a graver and shaped by hand. A very, very special craft art element on an otherwise mass-produced watch. Even the strap is special. It's got a gusset sewn in. It's got that black and white contrast. The strap is unique to the model. That's not always the case, even with limited edition Speedmasters. Throw it on the wrist, it does wear differently because of the lack of a bracelet. I think it wears a little bit lighter, and of course it's always easier to size up a strap, so if you want to give it as a gift or you don't want to mess around with your jeweler, this might be the one to jump at. I find that this is the most expensive one to acquire. So I mentioned that the first is often the one missing from the collection of three and sometimes the hardest to find. This is the most expensive and valuable of the three. And then what you have right here might be the most elaborate, and it's definitely the most recent. So what's going on here is we have the latest movement, the 3861 inside, which, among other things, is now a lot of different mechanical refinements not featured on the original 1861. We've got a coaxial escapement, master chronometer, amagnetic, silicon hairspring, free sprung, 50-hour power reserve. It's more heavily jeweled now, and it's got a stop seconds function, which previously these Moonwatch calibers never did. Now, still 42 millimeters in steel. We still have the sapphire crystal. We still have the ceramic tachymeter scale. Now we have a dial that's made of sterling silver. We have a sort of blue panda arrangement with applique indices. We'll do a lume shot just so you know what's what with this watch. And it's a little bit more conventional in terms of luminescence than the second generation model. Snoopy returns. You can see this is the 50th anniversary, 2020, of the successful recovery of Apollo 13. You flip it all over, and there's actually quite a bit going on. Let me fire this up here. Make sure I've wound it enough. Okay. So as long as the watch is running, Earth continues to rotate. And then when the chronograph is running, this little space capsule featuring Snoopy and his Hunt the Red Baron getup, you can see it is moving on a little transparent extended staff. And then we have this photorealistic moon phase. A really cool piece. You can see that this one is not explicitly limited in number, but it is limited by production. So these, remember, are fairly dear and do require some effort to get at an AD. So a timepiece that represents an example available immediately, you could immediately own all three Snoopies if you decide to buy this set today. So jumping from Switzerland to Japan, possibly the most impressive dial you're going to see today. The camera really does not do it justice, but this right here is the Atera Valley. It's the spring drive SLGA Emerald dial. It's the SLGA 025. The Atera Valley in Nagano Prefecture is split by the Atera River, and in the summer it's beautifully verdant with an emerald green hue, and that's what Grand Seiko was looking to achieve right here. A really, really gorgeous, beautifully textured and toned dial. It sits inside an Evolution 9 case. This timepiece, 40 millimeters in diameter. It's relatively slim, and it's got a nice 22 millimeter spacing between the lugs, so it wears like a modern watch. It does have a screw-down crown. It is 120 meters water resistant, and you can see all that hand-finished and hand-placed dial furniture, explaining why I've long considered Grand Seiko to have the best overall dial quality in the luxury class and mainstream luxury, alongside Rolex. Rolex does it by automation. Grand Seiko does it by hand craftsmanship. Now, this is the latest 9RA2 twin barrel spring drive automatic movement, so it's got 5 days of power reserve, and it's more accurate now. No longer 15 seconds a month, it is now 10. You can see that uncanny smooth glide of a spring drive hand, always a telltale of this unique system. It took decades to develop, really 1977 to 2005, to bring automatic spring drive to market. So you have the spring, the main spring, driving the hands. There are no stepper motors here. There's no battery, there's no capacitors, and really all you've got that's unconventional from a watchmaking standpoint is this unidirectional governing wheel, which is driven by the spring. As that turns, it creates an electromagnetic force that induces an electrical current and activates a quartz timing circuit. That, in turn, creates a back EMF, or electromagnetic force, that is a braking force on the wheel that slows the wheel and allows the watch to keep time. So it'll speed up or slow the wheel as necessary. Now, not everyone liked the original dial side power reserve of the original spring drive systems. So you can see here it's been moved to the case back, and this is a larger movement with, in my opinion, better overall finish, a combination of beveling and media blast. It's quite attractive. And of course, this is watchmaker built, tuned, and when the time comes, watchmaker serviced. So this is a movement designed to last the life of the watch, generations of human lives. So while it is in some way a quartz watch, it is not a disposable product. Don't make that mistake. It's just a little bit over 47 millimeters lug to lug, so it wears well even on a smaller wrist. It's not too thick, and this is an all-arounder. The absence of lume means I'm not going to call this a sports watch, but it is titanium, automatic winding, and 100 meters water resistance, so it is a very versatile all-arounder. It's really good for just about everything. Proudly made in Japan, it features a hand-finished case using their legendary tin plate Zaratsu manual finishing. It creates a mirror shine and requires about 3 years to actually master. So a very special watch. I can tell you, at this price point in Switzerland, you're not getting a handmade dial, a hand assembled and regulated movement, and a hand-finished case. Grand Seiko gives you all three. Okay, independence. Here's what can only be described as the foremost watchmaker in Austria. Habring of Austria is Richard and Maria Habring, husband and wife, and Richard has a distinguished pedigree, among others, IWC, Lange and Söhne, and so he was one of the originators of the modern-day split-second chronograph that could be built on top of a Valjoux 7750 architecture, and thus make what was historically a rare complication reliable and accessible. This is one of the most expensive and complex Habring models. This is the PERPETUAL-DOPPEL, so it is the Doppel chronograph. You can see it is what's best described as a mono-pusher split second. So as long as the chronograph's running, you can split the seconds and time 2 intervals occurring at once. But once you stop it, you do have to reset and restart. There's also a perpetual calendar, so no corrections necessary until the year 2100. You can see the dial has good depth with textures, tone, color, and visual balance. The weighting of the registers and the numerals is really quite even. It's 43 millimeters in diameter, so quite large, but it's got good wrist presence and a high degree of quality built in. This is based on, well, distantly, I should say, the 7750 architecture, but Richard Habring has added his unique Doppel chrono system, which is a modularity atop a 7750. And so you still have the cam system, the oscillating pinion clutch, but now you can see that we've got the second set of pincers to stop and release the split-second center wheel. So that's how that works. And while it is a 7750 architecture, as many parts as possible have been built in-house and, when not possible, sourced from Austrian suppliers. About a 42-hour power reserve, 4 Hz beat rate, you can see being based on the 7750. It does feature stop seconds. Very comfortable, though, again, quite large. It's about 52 millimeters lug to lug, so you're going to want about a 17 centimeter circumference wrist to wear this well. A very special watch and hugely appealing. It comes from a company that only makes a few dozen of any given model in a year, and thus exclusivity is assured. All right. In Switzerland, I feel like Laurent Ferrier is a perpetually underrated brand. It's true, it's an établisseur. Much like Vacheron for its first quarter millennium, Laurent Ferrier oversees the design of its watches, but it is an établisseur that relies on premier grade suppliers to provide parts. And the watch you have right here is an example of what Ferrier does its best. So a beautiful collaboration with Salon des Horlogers, which is a specialty vendor of watches out of Geneva. This is a 25-piece 2022 model year limited edition in stainless steel. It's got that lovely Gallet smoothed pebble case, 40 millimeters in diameter, unbranded, vintage-inspired onion-style crown. While it's now known as the classic Micro-Rotor, no longer the Gallet, it still has that Gallet smoothed pebble shape. The dial is a sector style. Inboard we have sort of matte finished, slightly rough, granular, or sandpaper textured center. Then we have the sectors. We've got a crosshair small second, white varnished, white gold assegai or spear-shaped hands. And then we have a set of tri-Arabic numerals with sort of inverted 3s and 9s. And when you turn it all over, the movement, very special. 72 hours of power reserve. We have a lathe cut and utterly silent jeweled staff mounted ratchet winding system with a micro-rotor to keep the watch thin. The finishing is world class. You can see those bevels don't lie. That's done by hand. The inboard angles are not just present in numbers, they're beautifully executed. We have a nickel anthracite coating with Côte de Genève, and then a steel bridge for the balance as well as for the ratcheting rotor, and you can see both bridges have been beveled and mirror finished with the balance cock hollowed out and then interior beveled with 4 interior angles, internally superlative. A double direct impulse system. There is no Swiss lever here. This is much like Breguet's natural escapement. So 2 nickel phosphorus wheels. Each one impulses the balance directly against its roller jewel and only in the balance's direction of travel. So 2 wheels for 2 different directions of travel, clockwise and counterclockwise. Free sprung, 6-position adjustment, 1 more than a standard chronometer. Remember, chronometer is 5. And then we've got a free sprung balance with an overcoil hairspring. So in any physical position, this watch keeps excellent time. You could see that there are polished wells around all of the jewels. And then we have engine turning on the base plate. We also have a number of black polished elements, such as the stud holder and the disengagement mechanism, so you can wind the watch. And of course, the watch is a beautiful execution, and it's got a movement properly sized for the case. Because of the combination of the jeweled staff and the micro ratchet on the rotor, this is the most unobtrusive and quietest winding system I've ever encountered. It's about 47.5 millimeters from lug to lug, so it's not too broad across the wrist, and it wears very nicely. A combination of a suede nubuck style leather with an Alcantara inner lining. The strap is super upscale, and the watch is very comfy. Laurent Ferrier, one of the best and most underrated brands in Switzerland. Finally, a brand and a model that really need no introduction. I think they're both superstars and standouts. Lange und Söhne. This was the beginning of the second generation Zeitwerk. It's the Zeitwerk date, 44.2 millimeters in white gold, and it's actually a little bit thinner than a standard previous generation Zeitwerk. More on that in a moment. We're going to show you that lovely triple jump. Everyone wants to see the triple jump when we're talking about a Zeitwerk. But if I had this arranged properly, I would have also made sure that we were at the jump of the date, because this is the Zeitwerk date. It has a orbital date that can be jumped using a little pusher that sits down at about, let's see, 7:30. And you can see how this date just jumps and orbits the dial. Now, we also have a feature that makes a lot of sense. We have an hour indexing trigger, and this solves one of the primary shortcomings of the original Zeitwerk, which is that if you wanted to advance by several hours, you had to advance through every individual minute, which was a little bit of a pain. So this solved that problem. So you've got a date, you've got a new hour indexing control, you've got a thinner case profile, again here in white gold, but then you've also got more power reserve, twin barrels now stacked on top of each other, so you've got 77 hours of power reserve, still a 2.5 hertz beat rate, still a free sprung balance, still an overcoil hairspring, still 5-position adjusted, still with a remontoire constant force system so that the jumps don't cause fluctuations in balance amplitude. But you can see now the bridge for the remontoire is a straight shot. It's no longer broken arrow like it was in the original execution. This is still a large movement that properly fills the case back, primarily made of German silver, which is nickel, copper, and zinc, with the copper giving this champagne hue to most of the metal. You can see screws are both fired blue and polished. We have lovely double solarization on the ratchet wheel, a solarization on the intermediate wheels, as well as you could see the entire winding system with solarization and micro-beveled teeth. The watch does feature freehand engraved structures as well as a black polished swan's neck regulator. It is exhaustive in its decoration and engineering, and while large, it's not overwhelming, as I can wear and enjoy this watch. I would say if your wrist is my size or larger, game on. It is bigger than the standard Zeitwerk, but it doesn't necessarily feel that way because of the thinner profile and the excellent proportions. This is a really cool watch, and someone is going to be extremely happy to take this home. Your New Year's resolution, up your wrist game. This watch can do it for you. Reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.